Welcome to Like a Doss, the podcast where Ronnie Doss will share with you insights around life, legacy, and leadership. For more information about our resources, visit our website at dossteam.com. Now let's join the podcast.
Well, hello guys, it's Ronnie Doss. Welcome back to episode 8 of Like a Doss. It's been quite a while. We're about 3 days behind on getting this one out. I've been on the road, and my man Joel Bennett's been traveling all over the world also. So we're excited to get in the studio and record this to send it out to you. So Joel, how are you, bud?
Man, life is going so well, Ronnie. I've missed you, and I've missed this opportunity to get together and just to pose some questions to you and let the people get to hear some great wisdom from you. Appreciate you letting me be here.
Yeah, man. Were you at the Indianapolis 500?
I did. Yeah, I went there and worked that race, and it was fantastic. And then went on to where was I? Dallas, and did some more racing there. So just I've been all over. It's been fun.
Wow.
What have you done? What are you?
Let's see. I've been on the road. Just got back from Illinois a few days ago. It was a great trip up there. I spoke a few times, and I'm back, and I'm actually home this weekend. We've got a trip planned, but home for another 2 weeks, and then I head down to Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral for training with NASA towards the middle of the month. So, yeah, excited about that. But, yeah, we're doing great as well, man. So, yeah, I've missed you too. I'm glad we're back on and getting this info out there. So what's your card of questions have for us today? What are we talking about, bud?
Can you believe we're on the 8th one already? This is fantastic.
Well, yeah, and I didn't mention this, man. We have so many downloads. It's awesome. We have 4 or 5 times ourselves already within just the 3 months that we've been doing this. And so I'm setting some pretty hefty goals for us as far as downloads and people sharing this. So if you guys are enjoying this, please continue to share it or send people over to download and listen. We are going to a video podcast here within the next month. And so we're going to let you guys know when that's coming out. We are so excited about that. We've got the studio set up, and we're almost ready to start recording a live video feed also. So the podcast will still be here on iTunes just like it is, but we'll also have it over on YouTube so you can watch also, and you can share that as well. So lots of good stuff happening, man. I wouldn't have dreamed that it would have happened. Things are going as well as they have, but I'm excited about it. And everywhere I go, man, people are saying, man, we're loving the podcast. So, hey, man, that's the whole point of this. So,
man, yeah. I'm excited about the video podcast for you. You're a handsome man. I, on the other hand, am not, but I apologize in advance, everyone, for the 1 month. So,
no, you're going to look at just wear a tank. Just make sure you wear a tank top. Let your guns out, man. Everybody needs to see the guns.
Tank top, flip-flops. I'm ready to go.
Everyone, I'll be a suit and tie, and you can be in your swimsuit and a tank top. It'll be awesome.
Every 2 weeks be something else. Goodness gracious. Oh, my gosh. Let's get into this, man.
Right, let's do it, man.
Lose my mind. I want to talk tonight about some things that we all need to realize that we're all running a race in our lives. Now, that's not always a bad thing. Running a race always sometimes seems scary. Sometimes think that's too much grind, too much pressure. But we're all on a journey. We're all on a mission. I want to ask you tonight about several aspects in walking, running, jogging our journey. Talk to me about patience in this journey. When we see our goal, want to get to it, feel like we're doing everything we can to get to it, it's just not getting there fast enough. Talk to me about some patience.
Well, it's a couple things. One, patient, right? This phrase is great. I learned this phrase about patience, and I actually recited it to my wife today. We were talking about something, but I always say this: patience is a weapon that causes deception to reveal itself. Patience is a weapon that causes deception to reveal itself. Now, some people hear that and go, well, I'm impatient because I want my goal to happen. But there's a lot of great things that can happen when we operate from a place of being patient. We get to see things for how they really are. We get to see us for where we are at. And we get to see really where it is that we can grow along the way. Because a lot of times people create success very quickly, Joel, and they don't get the legs under the table. You've heard me talk about that. And when creating success, you want to get all the legs under the table. So as you start to build and start to set things on the table, you don't want it falling over. And so patience is really part of where we start to learn the things that really are valuable, the things that really do matter along the way, the things that we can strengthen, things that we can focus on, things that we can pour more energy into to really create more of the things that we say that we want. Nothing that is really awesome ever happens overnight. Nothing that's ever been created that was great happens overnight. No big company, nothing happens. It's all these overnight successes that people, they talk about, man, they sure came up quick. Well, it's just not true. You don't hear about this stuff often. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes for people that have made it and become very, very successful. You don't. We see people now and they're like, wow, the LeBron Jameses, these guys are in the playoffs, the Stephen Currys, all these guys are like, man, they're so young and they're so good. Well, yes, but they've been playing basketball their whole life. They put thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in on the court. And yes, they have some potential that maybe other people might not have. Maybe they're a little more gifted in certain areas, but they worked it and they worked it and they worked it. And so you can't get frustrated with the process. The process is what pulls the greatness out of you. As you go through the process and you train and you focus and you stay diligent working on the things that a lot of people might overlook, you get stronger for a longer journey. And the journey of success, as I say this a lot, is yes, it's a marathon, but you got to approach it like it's a sprint. So you got to get after it every day. You got to work hard every day. You got to get up and decide, hey, I'm going to run this race and I'm going to run it as hard as I can. But you also have to pace yourself knowing that it's a long journey. You're going to have plenty of time to enjoy the successes that are going to come if you're willing to do the right things right now. So let me give you a little analogy since you're talking about missions. I heard that word. This is what I'm on. We've got the Lion 2.0 coming out. I'm so excited. We already have some pre-orders of that. You can go to my website and get it if you don't have it. Lion 2.0. It's awesome. But I'm talking in there about the Space Shuttle Discovery. It's one of the fleet of shuttles. They called it the queen of the fleet because it spent more hours in outer space than any of the other shuttles. But on its first mission, it sat there on the launch pad down at Cape Canaveral, where I'm heading in a couple of weeks, and they got down to the countdown, 10, 9, 8. They got down to 3, and the ignitions were ignited. They turned the engines on. They start blowing the fire out of the tail end of this thing, and it's about to leave. And automatically, they had to shut it down because there was a leak. There was a gas leak, and the computers picked up on it, and they shut the mission down, and they stopped it down to 1 second. And they stopped it. And I thought about, man, could you imagine the feeling of being one of those astronauts sitting on this rocket, knowing that you're getting ready to go on this awesome mission to go out of space, go somewhere you've never gone before, and yet at the last minute, it gets shut down. Now, I thought about, man, what would that be like? But what you've got to do is you've got to think about when something like this happens, that it's actually protecting you from a danger that you don't know. And a lot of times people don't want to hear that. But when you don't create success quickly, when it doesn't happen for you overnight, believe it or not, I believe that the universe that God has created and the laws that operate within this universe are actually protecting you from screwing you up on some level that you get some success that you are not ready for. You've heard me say this before, Joel, is that you don't ever want your talent to take you somewhere that your character can't keep you. And character is not just that you got a good reputation and that you're a nice person. Character means that you have the strength, the stamina, the integrity, like the integrity of a bridge, to hold itself up, to hold the weight that's going to cross it. You've got to have all of that and be able to handle it. Why? Because you impress people with success, but you impact them with your failure. And so we all have a standard, something that we need to hold to. And this process, this patience, these things that we go through make us better. And I believe that as we look back at the process, it's like Maya Angelou said. She said, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. Why? Because as tough as it was, as hard as bad as it was, it sucked sometimes. It did. It was tough. But guess what? Those are the times when I learned the most. It's the old it's the old saying. It's a quote, and it goes like this. It says, if it hurts, it instructs. And so sometimes you've got to deal with the pain and the frustration and the challenges of the process to make you stronger. It's just part of it. So if you surrender to that, instead of pushing against it, going, oh, I've got to already be there, I need to have it right now. Instead of doing that, if you're willing to surrender to that thought and say, wait a minute, there's a process here. And what I need to do is to take every moment that I've been given to just get a little bit better. So instead of rushing myself through it, I'm going to actually get better through the process. I saw Michael Phelps, the all-time leader in gold medals in the Olympics. His coach, a guy named Bob, I was seeing something about him. He said that Michael Phelps practiced every day, 365 days a year for 6 years straight. every day in the water before he went to the Olympics and won all those medals. Can you imagine practicing every day? And this guy, Bob, who was his coach, said, the way that I can tell you, the reason I can tell you that he did that is because I was right there with him. So can you imagine these two guys? This is going through the process. They're doing the work even when nobody else is looking. And this is how we become champions. Muhammad Ali just passed away. What did he say? He said, I didn't become a champion when people were looking. I became a champion when I was working, training, jumping rope, hitting the bag when nobody was looking. He said, I hated the training. I hated every minute of it. But that's what made me a champion. And it's part of the delay that gives us a chance to get better. Nothing that's awesome happens quickly. It never happens overnight. Usually an overnight success takes 15 years, 20 years. So get over it. It's not going to happen as quickly as you want. But the question is, are you really committed to staying the course? And if you are, and you use the time to get better, when the day comes, when it's time for you to shine, you'll be ready. You'll be a prize fighter that's ready for that fight. You've trained, you've dialed in, and you're ready to knock somebody out. And that's what happens when you endure the process and you don't give up just because it's taking a little bit longer. Anyway, that was my little take on that.
Man, that was awesome. There's a lot of good stuff I want to pull out of that too. You said rejection sometimes can be for our protection.
Mm-hmm.
Expound on that, man, because I think a lot of times we feel a rejection and we throw it. If it's something in our hand, we put it down. We're like, I'm moving on. Then I'm done with that. Rejection isn't always a bad thing.
There's not. Some of the people that you'll feel rejection from are just not meant to be in your life. And sometimes people can come into your life fast, heavy, trying to prove themselves to you, saying all the right stuff. But if you can just give it just a little bit of time, you start to see. I've been with my wife for 12, almost 13 years. You've been with Sandy for what would you say?
It'll be 25
years.
2 months.
Yeah. You knew in the beginning that you loved her. You have that in the beginning. But you didn't know her then the way that you know her now. And over time, you start to see things. People start to reveal themselves to you more and more. And thank God, some people come into your life very quickly, and you start to see very quickly. And you go, this might not be the best relationship for me or the best business partnership for me. And you see that in just a moment. You can recognize that. But sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And oftentimes it's in the rejection when someone says, well, this isn't right. I don't want to work with you. I don't want to do this. I don't see that happening. It's in those rejections that I believe that God, the universe, is protecting you from something that you don't really need. It's like if you can look back at your life and say, hey, God bless that relationship that didn't work, because if it would have continued on and maybe I would have married that person, or we would have started the company together, or we would have moved and set up a business in this area like we talked about, man, you could wind up down a path that takes a decade of your time of drama, heartache, stress that wasn't meant for you. And so just because something takes longer, just because you have to wait, it's the old saying, the sweetest fruit typically hangs on the vine the longest. But what we want to do now in our culture is to grab the fruit, show everybody, look what I got. I got more fruit than you already. Look what I've got. Look what I've got. When in fact, it's the people that are wise, a little more mature, that are willing to go, okay, you can brag about what you've got right now, but we're waiting. We're patiently waiting. We're sowing seeds in areas that we need to. And when all of this comes together, it's going to be something awesome. And that's what the people that build these huge businesses, big companies that impact the world, they know that these things just don't happen overnight. Now, some people have ideas that they'll develop a patent and people pick up on it, and that's kind of quick. But when you're talking about for typically building a company, building an enterprise, leaving a legacy, that never, ever happens quickly. And a lot of the things that we say we're missing out on is actually a protection from some drama, from some heartache, from some pain that we just didn't obviously need. Because if they can walk out of your life, if they can say no to you, then they're not imperative for your destiny. They're not imperative for who it is that you're going to become. Be grateful for what you do have. Focus on what you've got, not who walked out on you, not who rejected you, not who said you didn't have what it takes. All it takes is one time for one person to say, yeah, let's do this thing. One bank to go, hey, I'll loan you the money, right? One person to come into your life and go, hey, I can help you to get here, open the door. That's a key to the next level. It only takes one. This is why we can't quit. We can't focus on the things that didn't work. We focus on what has worked and what we know will work. And what will work is patience, hard work, consistency, and focus. And if you can get dialed into those things, I'm telling you, the next level will show up quicker than you think. But you're going to have to wait. You got to do the work. You can't rush it. So There you go.
That's good, man. And I think sometimes we can look at, the growth of seeds. A squash will grow massive amounts in just a few weeks, but the roots aren't deep. You look at an oak tree, it takes forever to grow, but its roots are deep and they're going to last through any storm.
Yeah, it's the redwood forest. They go 300 feet high. The reason they can do that is because their roots are interlocked. And so when the wind hits one of them, it hits all of them. It's the quote, and I don't know if I've shared this before, but it's the quote that, strong winds produce strong trees. Strong timber is not grown with ease. You have to have strong winds. And it's not, and strong trees like this, they don't just pop up overnight. And Chinese bamboo, I think it takes 10 years for the stalk to ever break the surface. But within 1 year, Chinese bamboo can grow over 100 feet tall. But it's taken 10 years for the root system to get into place. And so I've talked about that before, but it's just this principle. Somebody needs to hear this who may be going, I'm about ready to quit. My wit's end with my relationship, with my kids, with my business.
Right.
It's not happened fast enough. You need to know that there's something else you need to learn. If there's something that's not working for you, the greatest thing that you can do, the wisest leadership principle insight I can give you is to look in the mirror and say, what is it about me that might not be ready for this thing I'm trying to rush? And then you dial in on that and you get better. You get better. Yes, sometimes it feels like it's taking forever, but that still means that there's something that's just not quite right yet. And if you stay at it, you never know. One day, one phone call, one connection, one client can change everything for you. And, the shuttle, when it was sitting there and they shut it down, that was its first mission, Space Shuttle Discovery. It wound up flying more missions, being in outer space longer. It carried 231 astronauts to outer space. It sent most of the stuff that built the International Space Station was the Space Shuttle Discovery. And on its first mission, it got shut down right there at the very end. And I think a lot of times this is what people experience. They feel like they're ready to leap off. They feel like they're ready to make it happen. And then for some reason, something happens and they have to stop. But delay is not denial. The space shuttle went on to log more hours than any of the other ones in the fleet. For somebody that's listening to this, maybe you're at a point where you just think you're going to quit. But you may be the one that'll create more success in your industry within what it is that you're doing than anybody else. And yes, maybe you've been denied. But just use it to get better. Time is valuable, so use it to make you better for tomorrow. That's what great people do. That's what champions do.
Oh, that's good stuff. Are there ever times that you should put down a goal that you have and say, you know what, this isn't for now, and I need to focus on something else because you can divert your attention for your family or whatever with this goal in mind, and you go, you know what, I need to either change my perspective on this goal that I've had since I was young or whatever, and then go, let's change the goal. Let's change. You've been on this journey for a while. Is that something you can do to change where you think the finish line is?
I think you have to know ultimately, Joel, what the end result is going to be. And if you feel like you're going to pull back or switch horses midstream, as they say, you've got to be clear that this isn't just a pattern that's recurring for you, where when it gets tough and there's the plateau or this delay comes, that you don't go, well, let me just put it down for a while. And here's the thing. I think it's powerful to be able to look at a goal that you once had and go, I realize that's not really a goal. That's not what I really want right now. I used to think when I first started speaking that I wanted to have a church. I did. I'd been ordained in ministry. I thought, man, I'm going to start a church. Well, then I met Mr. Clemmer, and I started experiencing transformational work and seminars and trainings and personal development. And I started going, man, this is really powerful too. And then you can weigh it. But you have to know that you're continuing to move towards the end result that you want to produce in your life. You have to adjust some of your approach. It's the trajectory talk. 1 little bit, 0.1% of an angle, 1 degree can change where you wind up 100,000 miles from now. But you've got to be aware of that and be willing to adjust your approach. But if you're going to quit on a goal, this is what I would recommend to any of you listening to this. If you're thinking about quitting on a goal, you've got to ask yourself, Is it because I really don't want this, or is it because I really don't want to deal with the discomfort that it's going to take to get it? Because those are completely different things. One is left field, one is right field. And a lot of people, it's not that they don't want it, they just start to pretend like they don't want it. And I learned years ago, this was how Mr. Clemmer used to say, he said, Ronnie, if somebody wants something long enough and they don't get it, it hurts like hell. That's what he would say. That was his phrase, right? He would say that. And it does hurt. So what do many people do? They just decide that they don't want it. They tell themselves, that's not really important to me anymore. And then they suppress it. And then they go on to this next thing. And this next big thing that they say that they want, right? They work at it for a while. And then when the delay starts to come and this plateau starts to come where they don't see a whole lot of change happening quick enough, they start to pull back and they start to quit. And then they're like, well, let me jump to this next thing. And then they jump to the next thing. And this is where a pattern is developed. And so many people create a career of goal jumping from one to the next, and they become lifetime. It's the fizzle out thing. It's like when this thing loses its fervor, when it loses how awesome it looks, I'm just going to jump and do something different. And you see people doing that, or I'm going to speak for myself. I see lots of people that have done that, and you just got to be really honest with yourself. And if you're really honest, and you realize that it still matters to you, and there's still some fight in you, you just got to decide to get up one more day and do it one day at a time and go after it. And if you can do that over time, you'll break the pattern of feeling like you need to jump from one thing to the next. And then you start to look in the mirror and go, I do have some consistency. I am a consistent person. I am somebody that follows through. I am someone that finishes what I start. And then when you see yourself as that, then you're probably much more selective on what type of goals you're going to set anyway. If in the beginning you're not sure if it's really your goal or not, you got to do some real soul searching and figure out why it is you want to set that goal. But if you really get clear that needs to be an expression of something in your life, that needs to get out of you, then you've got to be willing to do the work. And you got to be honest with yourself of whether you're just pulling back because it's getting a little too hard, or if something else has happened and you realize you have this epiphany that, wow, this led me to here, but then I realized that this is where I want it to wind up. That's okay. You can change that. But all the time, you've got to be honest with yourself, because that's where you're going to find out really what you're made of.
Man, that was good. I had that question written down, and I didn't know if I was going to ask it. I honestly didn't. I thought this is going to be something that there's potential for that to be a disaster, seeing how Ronnie goes with this. And you did it. That was exactly where it needed to go. That was fantastic, because there are so many people that go, you know what? I'm going to wipe my hands of that one. I'm going to go or grab it onto somebody else's dream or somebody else's goals. Go, hey, that's kind of working. Hey, look how cool Ronnie Doss is. I think I'm going to do that. You know what? If that's not your goal, if that's not your calling, if that's not your passion, man, you're going to get burned.
Yeah. Be who you are. I think life is about figuring out who you are. And somebody listening to this, if you're in your teens and your early 20s or maybe even 30, and you think you've got it figured out and you know who you are and all that stuff, wonderful. God bless you. That's awesome. But I think it was Carl Jung who said, life doesn't start till you're 40. Up until then, you're only doing research. You're just trying to figure out who you are. And I think that's very true. I think but you have to be, the one thing you've got to be honest about, Joel, is whether you're just quitting because it's getting a little uncomfortable. That's all. If it's uncomfortable and you decide you're going to quit, hey, that's fine. It's no judgment. Nobody's saying you're a bad person. But just know that you're not pushing yourself to the next level to see what it is that you can truly become. And you want to enjoy the journey. You don't want to be working towards something that you hate. Stress is when you're working hard for something that you hate. You know what I mean? Passion is about working hard towards something that you want to do. I mean, that's the difference. So many people are stressed because they're working hard at something they're not passionate about, they don't love. And so you got to be honest with yourself. But once you figure that out, just know that you're going to have to work hard for a season. You're going to have to see what you're made of. And that's just putting the time in, man. That's putting the time in. And I don't care whether it's being a musician. I don't care if it's being a doctor. I don't care if it's being an athlete of some sort, pro athlete. I don't care if it's being, a speaker. I mean, everybody's growing. You've got to be willing to get better and know that you haven't already arrived. And you got to give yourself that time and just ask yourself, be honest with yourself. Why am I really giving up on this? Is it because it's gotten hard? So anyway, we've covered that, but yeah, I think that's a great question though, Joel. Very good question.
Man, I think that's good. I think along the way too, we need to set some goals uh, to get to our ultimate goal, to get to our passion, to get to the mission in life that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I reflect back to the movie with Tom Hanks when they're stuck out there. They don't know how to get home. And I know you this movie, backwards and forwards, and uh, they would try something that would, if we pull out this much power, will that get us? No, that's not going to get us.
Mm-hmm.
They kept trying and kept trying and kept trying, and eventually those guys get home. Can you expound more on that? Because that movie and that story is an amazing story.
You're talking about the Apollo 13 movie
Exactly.
with Tom Hanks. Never saw it.
No,
Never
you're
saw
right.
it. No. Yeah, Apollo 13. I mean, that, I talked about that in the first Lion program. If you don't have the Lion program, go to my website, get it. But anyway, and this is a great plug for my products, Joel. Thanks for asking these questions.
Man, I'm trying.
we didn't even talk about that. But anyway, the Apollo 13 missions is, these guys were out there. There was an explosion in the command module. Anyway, they wound up, trying to get back to Earth. So what was interesting, let me tell you a little bit about this from the media standpoint, just how quickly this goes along with wanting to jump ship and go to another goal, is in our world, we're so inundated with information. We've been dumbed down to think that we jump from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, that when Apollo 11, when the missions landed on the moon, when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, when they land on the moon, I think it was said that 600 million people watched that on television. Wow. The moon landings were observed by over 500 million people, 600 million people. Now, when Apollo 13 was launched, this is just, I think, a couple years later, Apollo 13 is launched. It was actually, the coverage of it, I think, was actually canceled on some networks, Joel. People weren't watching it. Just less than, not too many years later, we go from 600 million people watching what NASA's doing, this one small step for man, a giant leap for mankind, to now people don't want to hear anything about it. Why? Because we've been so conditioned to move to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, that these awesome events occur. And what happens is when those explosions go on, nobody was even paying attention until news got out that this mission could be lost, these astronauts could die, that this is what had gone on. And to get them back, Gene Kranz, the guy that was lead flight control guy back at Mission Control, he was the one that said, failure is not an option. And when they talked about getting these guys back, everybody got on board and said, this is it. We're going to make this thing work. These guys aren't going to float off to infinity out there on this command module. It's not going to happen. We're bringing them home. And they did everything that they could do to get them home because it became one specific goal. That was the goal. And everybody came together and got around this goal and said, we're going to make this thing happen. And you see the power. That whole story is the power of what happens when people decide that, failure is not going to be an option. And so when you decide, it's one of the things that I said in this last episode 7. I remember when we started, I said that when you decide that you're just not going to quit, that really frees you up to be more focused on the things that matter. Instead of kind of being double-minded in your head going, well, maybe I could quit if I quit this and wonder what people would think, maybe I could do this and make it look good. Even though I'm quitting, they won't know that I just quit. Maybe they'll think that something better came along or, whatever. That's how we're conditioned. And there's nothing wrong with changing careers. There's nothing wrong with changing goals and all that stuff if that's what needs to happen. But again, when you start to get that when you are really truly focused on a goal and you put everything into it, that the universe really does line up to help you. Yes, there's resistance, because I think a lot of that resistance and this patience thing that we need is to see really what we're made of. But when you really do get committed to something, it's like providence moves, that when you really get committed and focused, that things show up to help you. People show up to help you. Resources show up to help you. And it's amazing what can happen. And obviously those guys, Apollo, the 13 mission, they did. They made it back home, which it was a miracle. So many miracles. But I think, hard work and commitment and focus lead to a lot of miracles. Miracles happen when we prepare, when we work, And I think that's true for anything.
I think too, in that I remember how uncomfortable those guys were. They had to be, had to go through a time of being very uncomfortable. They were freezing in that module, and that goes back to what you were saying. There's some uncomfort. There's some times when it doesn't feel good, but they had to go through it not feeling good and things not being all rosy and sweet to get home.
Yeah, you're either committed to the result that you say you want to produce, or you're committed to comfort. And obviously these guys were doing calculations on, pad and paper and pen to try and figure out, when to hit the boosters to get them in a certain orbit, headed in a certain direction, the thrusters, and, they couldn't use much energy, whatever. Every move that they made, it was almost like it was life and death. And at some point you feel that way. You do. You feel that way, that this is it. And you're going to come to a point where it's like everything hits the fan. And let me just speak to you on this, okay? You're going to come to a place where you feel like everything has failed, that it seems like the stream is drying up, that there's no hope for you. But it's in those times that you can go, but I'm still here. I'm going to still show up. I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to do it one more time. That it's in that time that something happens and something shifts, so that when the miraculous happens or the awesomeness happens that you've planned for and worked so hard for, when it happens, it changes a perspective in your mind. It shifts a paradigm in you to know that really all things really are possible. We talk about this in the faith world a lot, and I'm not trying to go, esoteric or religious on anybody or whatever, but I believe that God has given us these amazing tools to create awesome things. I believe we're created to create. And I think so many times right in the moments before something awesome is supposed to happen, that it's just at the point where somebody goes, this is too much, and they quit, they pull back. And really, it's when you can push through in that moment and just decide to dig in, that's when this miraculous thing happens. A lens, some of those lenses, those belief systems that I talk about, shift. And now you start to say, man, the miraculous can happen. All things really are possible. And now you've had an experience of it. So now you step into the next endeavor with a new level of faith, a new level of belief in what really is possible. And now you're grounded. Now you can handle even, you have more capacity to handle more challenges and more stress. Anyway, on the astronaut thing, we can be done. Neil Armstrong was a fighter pilot. They said he was one of the best, and that's why he moved to the top of his industry, which was being a pilot. And then the Korean War, he goes to, he's in, I think, at Purdue University. They call him off. The Korean War starts, but he had gotten his pilot's license before he was 15 years old. So he could fly a plane before he could drive a car. But because he was so good, they said that he could handle pressure. He was flying some of the most highly technologically advanced aircraft ever made at the time. This is before he became an Apollo astronaut. But they have him flying these high-tech aircraft that nobody else could fly. And he had to handle tough situations because no one else had flown these aircraft before and knew how they would handle. But they said he had nerves of steel and that he was willing to keep a calm head when tough times came. And I think that with us, even as we say it's tough, we're freaked out, we got all this stress, but I don't think any of it's really life and death like it is when you're traveling like those guys did, even in outer space. But you've got to keep a cool head about you and know that if you do the right things, that things will work out and that in the end you will win. Even if you're delayed, even if you're postponed a bit, even if there's more frustration, a little more pain than you thought, you got to just trust this process and get better along the way. So that's it.
Man, awesome stuff. Episode 8 in the books.
Is it over already, man? Wow. Yeah, 30 minutes.
All right, man. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Ronnie. I appreciate this time. Give him a nugget to think on as we go.
Yeah, just sticking with it. New seasons come, they change. Maybe you're just stepping out of one season into the next. Maybe you're doing awesome. If you're doing awesome, stay at it. Stay at it, and things going good, ask yourself, hey, what can we add to right now? Things are going good. We're moving forward. We got lots of momentum. Is there anything we can add to this to diversify a bit, to spread out a bit, to add some new stream of income, do whatever? Hey, if that's a new season, be thinking that way, thinking down the road. If you're going through a tough time right now, just know that this too shall pass, right? Even when it's tough, something better is on the way. So just stay encouraged, keep your head up, keep working. I promise you good things are going to happen. So anyway, I appreciate you guys being on here. Thanks so much, Joel. Guys, visit the website again, dossteam.com. If you enjoyed this today, share it with somebody that you know that you think needs to hear it. We appreciate you guys, and looking forward to talking to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. The Like a DOS podcast is released every first and third Friday of the month. For more information, visit our website at dossteam.com.